Hello, welcome to our first lesson in our new unit. Today's lesson is going to focus on range and measures of central tendency. And you're going to notice there's a vocabulary bank. Today we're going to define the first four: data, measures of central tendency, range, and mean. So we're going to try to accomplish lesson 1 and lesson 2. So we're going to work with these definitions, and then we're going to work with the numbers to see what they look like. So let's get started. A set of numbers or facts from which conclusions can be drawn is referred to as data. So let's write that. You can pronounce it data if you prefer. I know we all have preferences how we pronounce it. This example here, and this is very common, we work with data as teachers and as students all the time. Here are quiz scores, and so this it doesn't tell us what these quiz scores are based out of. We might want to assume that it's 7 because we're noticing that 7 is the highest number, and but it could be out of 10, could be out of 20. So this is a set of data or data. Next, blank are numbers used to describe the center of the data set. So if we look up at our vocabulary, we notice that it says the measures of central tendency is next. And you're noticing that there's 4 words and only 3 blanks. So we'll make this work. So let's fill that in. Measures of central tendency. And while you're finished writing that, I'm going to go back over. Measures of central tendency are numbers used to describe the center of the data set. And mean, median, and mode are all measures of central tendency. So when you hear this, it is speaking about mean, median, and mode. And as we explore this, you're going to see why we call those the center of the data set. So let's look down, and mean, an easy way to remember mean is to think about it being the average. Median is kind of the middle of the data. Think about the median in the road, that's the middle, the stripes in the road. And finally, the mode is the number or numbers we see the most. So those are some keywords that are going to help us as we go through this. So now let's look at the next spot. It says the difference between the greatest and the least values in the set of data is called the range. So let's fill that in. That's the range between the highest and lowest numbers. It goes on to say it is not a measure of central tendency, but gives us valuable information about the set of data. And range is often included because it tells us the spread between the highest number and the lowest number. It tells us whether the data is tightly aligned or whether there's a big spread. So we're going to turn our focus on calculating the range. And the range is relatively easy to find. We're going to use the set of data from example A that we saw on the front of the page, and here it is again, to find the range of the quiz scores. It says be sure to show your work. So I would like you to write down what I'm writing down right now. So we're going to start with the highest number, and we're going to subtract the lowest number. And what we'll get is the range. So we scan the data. The highest number I see is 7. And this is pretty easy to find with this particular set of data. So it doesn't matter which 7. I'm just going to circle the first one I see. That's the highest number. Then I need to subtract because I'm finding the difference. And we're going to look for the lowest set of data, our lowest number in the data. And so the lowest number is 3. So it doesn't matter again. I'm just circling so you can see which numbers I'm using. So the difference is 4. Therefore, the range between the highest and lowest number is 4. So what I'd like you to do is pause the video. I'd like you to go ahead and try finding the range for the next three sets of data. And then we're going to describe in words how we find the range. Be sure to show your work and then continue this video when you have that completed. So here are the answers. The range for the data in set A is 4 5/10. The range for the data in set B is 317, and the range for the data in set C is 32. So it asks us to describe in words how you find the range. So you could say something like, I found the highest piece of data and I subtracted the lowest piece of data from it. So you put that in your own words, and please write that now. So when you go to do this, your wording might be different than mine, but that's okay. We're trying to make it clear to you. You're trying to make it clear to yourself what to do. So I wrote that we subtract the lowest data number from the highest data number, and it helped me to underline this word from, meaning that I'm taking the highest number first. So you write it however it makes sense to you. So now let's move on to lesson 2, which is the mean. So now we're going to figure out how to calculate the mean. And the mean is kind of a strange word. You're probably more familiar with hearing it called the average. So mathematically speaking, it's referred to as the mean, but also known as the average. So the mean is the sum of the set of data divided by the number of items in the set of data. So that might be a little bit confusing at first, but once we do it, I think it won't be quite as confusing. So it says, use a set of data from example A, same set that was on the front of the page, to find the mean, which means the average of the quiz scores. Be sure to show your work. So you do not have to necessarily show that you have that you've added up all these numbers. You don't have to show me your figure work. You can use a calculator, but I do need to know what the sum is. So would you please pause and add those numbers? And the sum, meaning after we added those numbers, is 47. And I want to let you know I always add the numbers at least twice. It's easy, particularly when you have a large set of data, to make a calculation error. Sometimes the first time through I add them individually, and then the second time through I group them. Another pitfall I want to warn you about is always clear your calculator before you start. So we're going to take the sum that we now have, and we're going to divide it by the number of data items. So number of data items. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And again, I would probably do that twice just to double check. So we're taking 47, the sum, divided by 9. So let's do that together. And when you do that, we get a beautiful, lovely number, and it is 5.2 repeating. Now, we're not given permission, or it doesn't say right now that we can round, but more than likely we would be allowed to round to the nearest 10th or 100th or even whole number. But right now, we're going to write it as is. And as I look at this set of data, all of these scores are whole numbers, so more than likely we would round this to just 5. That's more representative of this data. But again, because we weren't told that we could do so, we're going to leave it like this. So that we could say that the average quiz score was 5, or purely it is 5 and 0.2 repeating. So now let's go on, and I'd like you to try the same thing for all sets of data. And I want you to remember that we are taking the sum, that means we're adding all together, and dividing it by the number of data items. So please pause and do that on your own. So let's look at the results. For data set A, the sum was 36, and there are 5 pieces of data, or data items. And so we divided by 5, and it was 7 2/10 was the average. The next set of data had to do with money. And the sum, or the total of all the data, was 2,028, and there were 8 data items. So 2,028 divided by 8 was $253.50. And I want you to stop and acknowledge this. Last time when I found the range, I did not go back and put the detail, the dollar sign. And shame on me for not paying attention to details because this was specifically money. So it should include this dollar sign. And your calculator would not put the zero here, but since we're dealing with money, it should be $253.50. So our next set of data, again, is talking about percents. So again, it's a detail that's important. The sum is 567, and it was divided by the 7 data items. And so the mean, or again, we can say the average, was 81%. And that little percent sign is also important. So would you please stop and describe in words how to find the mean? So finally, as you look at what I wrote, I put find the sum, and I remind myself that means add, of all the data, and then divide by the number of data. Most importantly, it's important for you to summarize your learning, and you can word it whatever you see fit that helps you know what to do. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.